Do not worry. You will not be called on more if you're in the rows up front or farther back. The the interactive part of the lesson won't start until our second half, so I'm getting you through all the tedious music theory stuff first, and then we'll have a little break, and then we'll do the fun arm directing and singing stuff. Right, yes.
Are we gonna put on a show next Sunday?
No, I very expressly, when I was announcing this, made sure that people knew that this does not mean this is not a sign up sheet to be a future song leader. So, zero strings attached. This is just if you want to know more about music and more about things that have helped me through my song leading career, heavy quotations. But we're gonna go ahead and get started. So. I see all familiar faces here, but for y'all that don't know, I have a Bachelor of Arts in music, so this is what I spent 5.5 and a quarter of my college career studying and doing. I took everything from music theory to music history to an actual conducting class to music composition. So a lot of this stuff is kind of that beginning of what I studied in college, and me and Baxter had just met for breakfast one day after I got off work, and the idea for a song leading class had bounced around in my head, and I brought it up, and he was like, "Yeah, we could do that next month." I'm like, "Okay, sounds good." Yeah, so very glad that he was willing to help me kind of get this all together and to make this happen. So I'm very grateful, and just so you know, I'm not just a random guy who's up here and has done song leading a lot. This has been part of kind of what I knew for a good chunk of my life. So I'm happy to get to pass this on to y'all today. So what specifically we're going to be talking about is, like I said, we're going to start out mostly with reading music. The main things about song leading is reading and leading the music are kind of the two main halves. So this is not the exhaustive list, but some things we're going to cover today is knowing the musical alphabet, which we'll talk more about that, and then knowing what rhythm means, what time signature is. I'm not going to go through like all of like the music theory related things, but I'm going to go through the music theory that is related and can transfer into song leading. And then after that, we're going to talk about leading the music, how you actually start songs, what are some materials and things that can help you really know how to start the song, and also how to guide the congregation, how to guide the worship in a way that is original to the song's meaning. You don't, as you know, it's not required to wave your hands in a certain way. It's not required to start on a certain note or not, but part of, especially with worship music, is the intention behind the song. What was the meaning that the composer had in mind whenever they wrote the song? And so part of your job as song leader is to kind of help convey that feeling. So yeah, starting with reading the hymns. So this, if you want to grab a songbook, just kind of have that in front of you, because I'm going to have lots of examples from the songbook today, because this is all in the context of leading singing. So I want you all to kind of be able to see examples of things that we're going to be talking about in the worship music. So, the musical staff. The staff is the part of the songbook that you'll see is those bars. It is all the bars, all the spaces contained in that line of music that surrounds the lyrics as we see in the songbook. There's lots of different symbols, lots of different types of notes, and all these things. So what I want to do is I just want to pick these kind of individually one at a time and go over each aspect, and then we'll move on to the next one. So probably the best place to start when we're talking about reading music is notes. Is what do all these lines and spaces mean, and how the musical alphabet relates to it. So the musical alphabet sounds deceptively easy, and it is at first until we expand upon it. You know that old saying, "Come on guys, that's not rocket science"? Well, in rocket science class, they always say, "Come on guys, this is a music theory." So I'm going to say something that might make sense, and then I'm quickly going to make it not make sense, and then we'll make it make sense again. So The musical alphabet is comprised of 7 letters. Only 7 letters. A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. As you can see here, if we start with C, we go C, D, E, F, G, A, and then after G, it just goes right back to A. Now, the thing about the musical staff is, it's not just 7 notes, as we know. It is an infinite sequence of those 7 letters. So it just keeps going and going and going. If you're looking in a songbook, if you pick any song whatsoever, you'll notice there's 2 sets of the staff, of those bars and spaces. And that is just one part of the musical spectrum stretched out to where we can see it. So that is just an endless sequence of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, starts over with the next space, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You'll also notice that every line and every space is a different note. So when you go from one line, you go up to a space, that's the next note, you go up to the line, to the space, to the line, and that's how the musical alphabet flows. Technically, there is an infinite amount of notes. Oftentimes, you'll see with instrumental music, you'll see the treble clef here, you'll see the flute will play notes, they'll even start adding spaces and lines. You see if there's a note sitting on top of the space here, they'll just draw another line, and that's another note, and then there's a space, and then a line, a space, a line. In flute music, notes will be 4 lines above the very top of this staff. The reason that we have it notated so in our songbooks is because with this, if we go back to, if you see in the songbook, it has the 2 sections. That is just kind of the area where the higher range of human voice tends to sit, and the lower part with the kind of curly Q there, that is in general where the lower voice, that is kind of their usual range. Whenever they first started notating music with like Gregorian monks way back, before we had music notation, they just drew a whole bunch of lines and then they would put them in different spaces and they wouldn't have specific notes. They would just say, okay, this note is so far above the next note, and they would just put dots on these bars and lines, spaces and lines. And then as that evolved in time, they said, okay, well, when we sing, our voices kind of tend to sing these notes best, which is how we got the staffs that you see in the songbook today. So the top section there with the fancy ampersand looking symbol, that is called the treble clef. That is the higher voices where the sopranos and the altos are notated. And the lower one there, the little, like I said, curly key with 2 dots, that's called the bass clef, which is a bit more self-explanatory. That's kind of where the lower voices tend to sit. Now, there are 3 notes in between these gaps. It tends to look a lot farther just because we have to put the words in there so that there's in between. But there is a space right in here, and then there's a line, which is what we call middle C. So right in the middle there, actually I think I have a little pointer here. Aha! So right in the middle here we have what is called middle C, and that's just one line drawn in the middle there with a note, and then moving up is D at the bottom of the treble clef. So these are connected by 3 notes. There's the note that's at the top line, then there's a space, one middle line, and then the space at the bottom here, and then it just keeps on going. So, a way that I like to visualize it, especially it helps when I was in my music courses, I was taking piano at the same time as music theory. If you know how piano works, you know that going up the keys plays higher and higher and higher notes. So, if you're looking at, where's my mouse? Oh, that's not right. That's because I'm hitting the wrong button. So, if you're looking at these keys here, that this key right here is the note C. If we go back, that key there is that note there. And as you go up the piano, you go from C to D to E to F. In the same way, it goes up and up and up and up that scale. So again, just like with the staff, with the piano, you're just going up to G and then starting over. So you go C, D, E, F, then we get to G, and then once you get that next note, that is A, and it starts all over again. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Any questions so far? Feel free to raise your hand, because this is a lot that we're going to drop on you. This is like a whole semester's worth of beginner's music theory. So, yeah, any questions so far? Okay, good. So, musical alphabet, A through G. Once you hit G, start over again. And the staff here is just the stepping up of the notes, going up from A to G, and again, and again, and again. And here I have a little diagram with it filled in. If you want to memorize, kind of get a better visualization of how the staff lines up with the names of the notes, feel free to make yourself a little cheat sheet. You can even, I have my own songbook that I've taken home, and I make all kinds of notes in them depending on if I'm leading a song, if I find something particularly difficult to remember. I take it home and I just kind of jot down in pencil usually so I can erase it. But having your own little cheat sheet is a good way to practice and to kind of learn what space is what line is what, and kind of filling out that whole staff there. So some fun ways, some mnemonic devices that I've seen and I've used to help remember what the notes are is up here with the treble clef. We're going to stick mostly in the treble clef just because in the context of song leading, that's where you take a lot of your information. The starting note for the main part of the song usually is found in the treble clef. And kind of where you're looking, kind of where you lead, usually tends to go from the treble clef. But we start with the spaces here, and the spaces were very kind and nice and spelled a word for us. So when remembering the spaces, the notes that are found in the space here, it spells out face. So every space is a letter in the word face. Every space is in face. So filling that in, you see that even though the alphabet follows the order A, B, C, D, E, F, you have a nice little word spelled out with the spaces. Now the lines are where it gets a little more complicated because Edgbaduf is not a word. So in an attempt to kind of help ease the learning of the line notes, we've made fun little mnemonic sentences. We kept trying to look up the word for this. At first we found was acronym, and then it says something about backronym is making a word out of sentence letters. But so we're kind of there. But some fun kind of sentences to help you remember the letters of the lines E, G, B, D, F. The most common one that I've heard is every good boy does fine. If you just take the first letter of every word, that's the one that I've used, that my professor taught me, that most people have used. I also heard a lot of people also say every good boy deserves fudge, kind of making sense of things. And then the more and more I researched into this, the more chaotic these sentences got. As you can see, Elvis's guitar broke down Friday. He must have got especially rowdy on Fridays, I guess. Eating green bananas disgusts friends. That is a factual sentence, I guess. Elephants got big dirty feet. That is, I'm guessing, also a factual thing, even though I've only seen elephants in the zoo. And then this one at the end, I was like, who in the world came up with this one? Even George Bush does fart. I'm sure he does. But the importance here is that whatever helps you remember, whatever helps you learn best, that's just something that has kind of helped me with my music learning, is remember E, G, B, D, F are the lines on the musical staff. So for spaces, we've got F, A, C, E. And with the lines, we've got every good boy does fine, every good boy deserves fudge, even George Bush does fart. So there you go. Any questions about that? And even so, like we showed with our full staff, as we're looking here, as it descends down into the bass clef, we remember, so right here we have E, so then the space underneath the treble clef, that is going to be D. It continues that order, it continues on down, and then you have, like you said, there's a line in the middle here, that's C, and then you go down to the space above the bass clef, that is B, and then this top line here for the bass clef is A. Now again, if you follow that whole order, that sequence, that is how that's going to go. But again, our main focus with song leading is going to be in the treble clef. But the order continues. A, then the top space is G, F, E, D, C, B, A, G. And personally, I have a soft spot for this little space down below the bass clef because as a tuba player, that's where I did all my work. People love to write music for tubas way down below here, sometimes 3 whole lines underneath there. But like I said, for our context of song leading, good to know the lines and spaces for the treble clef up here. All right. And so now that you've kind of wrapped your head around the whole musical alphabet, here's where I throw a wrench into everything. Because in between all of these lines and spaces, we have the letters E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. Then we throw in what's called flats and sharps. Now, flats and sharps are just notations that are added to a note. So if you look at a note, this is F flat. So all that means is whenever you think of a flat tire, you think of it kind of droops, it sags. When something is a flat note, that means that note is lowered just a little bit. Conversely, whenever a note is sharped, that means it is raised a little bit. So if you have a note that is, let's say, F sharp, that means there's this little tone that is in between this space and this line, but all you do is you just add that symbol next to the note, and that's how you know that it is flat or sharp. My professor told me, the flat tire analogy, your whole car tends to sag when you have a flat tire, and then when you're poked with something sharp, you kind of jump up in the air. So a sharp raises the note up a little bit. Represented on a piano, these black keys, so you see there's C, D, E, F, G, these are all the regular notes as they're regularly written on the staff. If you have a sharp or a flat, that's where these black keys come in. There's that note kind of in between each of the notes, and it's different. It sounds different if you have your pitch pipes, or if you have a pitch pipe app. If you look on the pitch pipe, you'll see that on each pitch pipe you have all the letters kind of notated around in a circle, but you also see those little symbols in between each letter that shows that if you're going to have an F sharp or a G sharp or a C flat or whatever it is, that is the tone. So if I play, let's see, if I play a D note, that's just regular D. If I play a D flat, it's slightly lower. And if I play D again, but then it's a D sharp, it's ever so slightly higher. So that's how flat and sharps, when they're notated in music, that is what that means. Flats, a little bit lower, sharps, a little bit higher. And the main thing you just need to know for that is if you use a pitch pipe to start the song that you're leading, that you want to make sure that you're starting with the right note and not a different one. Any questions about flats or sharps? Right. Yeah, no, it's good you noticed that. There are 2 notes. Why? Because it is. That's the way it is. Isn't that fun? There's a lot of music that's like, why is it like that? Because someone said it was way long time ago. Okay. Yes. You'll notice between E and F, there is no flat and no sharp. So if you see someone notate an E sharp, it's just an F. Based on the way, I guess, the wavelengths work, they are the same. And also, you can't see it here with this small piano, but yeah, there is no black key in between B and C. There's just, if you keep going on a piano, there's just C is the next white key. So yeah, that's just a fun little tidbit of an E sharp is just F, and F flat is just E. B sharp, same thing, is just C, C flat, just a B. All right, so now we've talked about notes, we've talked about flats and sharps, so you can start to kind of put together on this staff. You now know what these lines and these spaces mean when there's a note in it. And also, you know, if you're looking up in the key signature here, and we're fixing to talk a little bit more about key signatures, but you know what those funny hashtags and little lowercase b's are. Those are flats and sharps. So now to add on to our knowledge of, and also you know about clefs. You know about the funny ampersand is a treble clef, and then down below, if you look in your songbooks, there's a fun little backwards C with 2 dots. That's the bass clef. And those are just where the human voice tends to range. So, adding on to our knowledge of the musical staff, we now have key signatures. Key signatures, all they basically do is tell you that throughout a certain song, a song is going to have certain notes be sharp and certain notes be flat. Simply in the way that a song is written, if the composer wanted it to have a certain feel, they put it in certain keys. You'll see that oftentimes there can be key signatures that have nothing at all. And that just means every note is as it normally is. There's no flats, no sharps. Some composers are really mean and put lots of symbols there at the beginning. If you see, the key signature is always found in between the clef and the time signature. So if you open up a song and you see all this, just know that the composer probably had a reason for writing it in that key, but boy howdy, as a singer and a instrumentalist in the past, seeing stuff like this is like, oh boy, that's just mean. So all that shows, in the same way as we see notes are notated in the lines and spaces, and that means that this note is a C, means that that note is a B. In the same way, if a symbol is in the key signature, that just means that that note found in that space or that line is going to be flat. So here, it is saying that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this key signature is showing you that every single note is going to be flat. Not just on the treble clef. This applies for every single A, B, C, D, E, F, and G found in that song. So, in this key signature, all the notes are flat. In this key signature, you're going to have, let's see, it's F, C, G, D, A are all going to be sharps. So every time that those notes occur in the song, they're going to be sharped. They're going to be raised a little bit. And then if you're a good, nice composer, then your piece with no flats, no sharps is just as they are. You will find sometimes that composers will have a flat symbol or a sharp symbol that isn't a part of the key signature here. It's in the middle of the song. And that is just for writing purposes. Sometimes when you have certain chords have to be made, which is just a stack of notes that sound nice together, they'll have what we call accidentals, which is just, oh, look, there's a flat or a sharp accidentally in that song. It's not accidental, but it feels accidental because it's just in the middle there. Let's see. If you all want to be opening up to number 741, just a good example of this. Number 741 in the book, you'll see that about 4 measures in, you'll see that there's a sharp symbol next to one of the alto notes. And that is written like that so that it fits into the chord, the stack of notes that all sound good together, because you do have to have flats and sharps to make certain chords sound good together. But that is what we call an accidental, one that is written in inside the music instead of just notated in our key signature here. Any questions about key signatures? All right. So then, kind of part of our using the context of song leading, you'll notice that when you look in the songbook, the notes aren't shaped like the ones in our regular music staff here. These ones are all some form of circle or dots or things like that. But in our songbooks, you notice that all the notes have funny shapes. And this is a system that's very aptly named called shaped notes. This was, Carrie, what year was it that? So yeah, and I think in the 1790s, they officially started this whole shaped note system. It was, I believe, a combination of early Church of Christ. I think there was a Baptist composer involved. A few denominations all kind of working together to kind of put together all their ideas for keeping track of the notes. And so in the same way that we have in keys, we have what is called solfege. If you remember The Sound of Music, the song do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, a deer, a female deer, is just, these are just names that they gave notes within a key signature. So the first note of a key signature, in this case, C, is do. And that just helps give names to do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. every step of a key has a name. And so, in the same way, they wanted to go one step further with the shape note system. They assigned a shape for every single member of a musical key. Do being a triangle, half circle, diamond. Um, this is a system that I haven't used a whole lot in my time as a song leader, but I know that looking into it, it helps a lot with music, people making worship music, composing songs, and also when you're learning new songs, when you get a little bit further into like sight reading and learning new music, this system really helped them to kind of know which note fit in where it fit in the key. So just kind of an interesting aside. I usually don't use it a whole lot for our song leading purposes, but just kind of a fun deal to know about. Any questions on that? Yeah.
It helps with the major scale.
Yeah, major scales, which scales are essentially just something. If you have a particular key signature, then a scale is, as we see here, every note in order. So when you're practicing a certain key signature, you'll play the notes one step at a time, going up and up and up until you hit what's called an octave. An octave is just one note, is all the notes contained from one note until it occurs again. So this is a C, and we keep going up, C, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and up until we hit C again. So in that way, the alphabet starts over after we hit G. You see that in the key of C, one octave is C, all the way up to the next C. And there's another C up here in the fun lines above that. And then there's a C when you go down into the bass clef, that's down below here. Those are all octaves. So that's just 8 notes of one C to the next C, one A flat to the next A flat, one C sharp to the next C sharp. Yeah. Any other questions? That kind of answered? Okay. So we've added on another part to our understanding of the staff. Is we added in our key signature. We've learned about the notes, how they sit, means what letter, and also how the key signature affects it, and our scales, octaves, that basically just help us notate if it's a flat or a sharp, where it is in the scale. So, next part is rhythm. And this is one of the bigger parts about reading music and also leading music is how long are we supposed to sing a certain note? When we're looking at the words, we can read the words, but how long is that note supposed to last? And so I've kind of listed out here the main kind of building blocks. So in general, and like I said, there are exceptions to this rule, but in general, a measure, if you look at the scale, if you look at the staff, that this whole box here, separated by a line, and then moving on, you see that it has the hard divides. In general, we'll talk more about time signature, but those measures last 4 beats. Or if you think about just like the rhythm at which a song goes, if you think of Jesus Loves Me. Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. You kind of feel the way the song kind of progresses forward, kind of the bounce of the music, that is 4 beats. And so the way that notes last, they notate based on how many beats in those 4 beats does a note last. A whole beat, those big circles with no tails or anything attached to it, lasts 4 beats. So if you're holding out a note with a whole note, it lasts 4 beats without any interruption. La, la. It's 4 notes long in the beat. A half note is exactly what it sounds like. It is half of a whole note, and thus it lasts 2 beats. So if a measure is 4 beats long and you're singing half notes here, they sound like la, la, 1, 3. Quarter notes in the same way, we're just kind of going down the number, we're splitting them more and more, is a quarter note is one note on every beat. So again, if a measure is 4 beats long, you're singing la, 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 la. And then eighth notes are even one step further. There is 2 notes for every 1 beat. So, sorry, let me get some water. If you're singing eighth notes in a 4-beat measure, it sounds like la 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 la. Eighth notes can also be notated if you ever see the notes that are like connected with that little tail up there. Here we see that you have a half note, and then these are 2 eighth notes, just one after the other. When eighth notes are one after the other, they kind of tie them together. So it's a little easier to see. Not that that little tail that they have on the eighth note is hard to spot, but just in case, to help declutter, makes it a little easier to read it. So the basic building blocks, there are even, we go even further beyond eighth notes. There are 32nd notes, 64th notes, 132nd notes, but we're not going to see them in vocal music much. So for the context of song leading, these are the main building blocks you're going to see for music notation. A whole note is 4 beats, a half note is 2 beats each, a quarter note is 1 beat, and then an eighth note is a half beat, or that means 2 notes per beat. Any questions about that? All right. One little, oh, that's why I went backwards. In the same way that there are little markings for each note, there are also notations for silence, or what we call rests, meaning that whenever you see these markings, these denote that there is a part where there's not supposed to be any singing, any notes being played. So if you see in worship music, there tends to not be a lot of silence. We tend not to use a whole lot of rests because we're all kind of singing at the same time. But sometimes you'll see in split parts, when we have a song where just one voice is singing, that they will notate for the other parts to not be singing. I have all these dog-eared. What's that? 898. Yes. If you turn over to 898, there are parts where it starts out just the men singing and then the women answer. But if you look there, you see that little rectangle at the very beginning of the top staff there. That is what's called a whole rest. It's the exact same as a whole note, but instead of 4 beats of singing or playing, it denotes 4 beats of silence. So if you hear the song and you hear every beat, unto thee, O Lord, unto thee, O Lord, you're hearing that beat there. That is 4 claps, 4 beats of silence for the women before they come in and repeat the part at the beginning there. So, sorry? Getting ahead of me there.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, so a whole rest and a half rest are deceptively similar. The main difference is the whole rest, as you see there in 898, the rectangle is on the bottom of the line, and with a half rest, 2 beats of rest, the rectangle is on top of the line there. And rests won't be put in different parts on the staff. They're always notated in the same place. So you're not going to have to go hunting for rests. They're always going to be in the same place, pretty much right on that middle line there. If we look at, they're always going to be notated on this middle line here, or very close to. So whole note, whole rest, 4 beats of silence, half rest, 2 beats of silence. This funny, I don't know, really messed up toothpick looking thing is a quarter rest. That is 1 beat. And going into 898, you notice that there is a quarter rest right after the whole rest. So that in total is 5 beats of silence waiting to come in for the next bit. And then our fun little, I don't know, a 1 with a fancy pompadour. I just like to humanize things. I like to look at them in funny ways. A 7 with a pimple on its nose. I don't know. That's an eighth rest. That is similar to an eighth note. That is a half a beat of silence. If you turn to, I had a song for this, so I'm just gonna look it up in the back. He's everything. Is that Seeking the Lost? I was more prepared with my songs, and then all my dog ears came out. Sorry about that. 631. Ah, 631, yes. An infamously difficult song, both for the conductor and for the congregation. But yes, The Lord Bless You and Keep You is a wonderful example of lots of different things. But yeah, no, if you look down about 2 lines in, you see that there is a quarter rest in the first measure there, followed by an eighth rest, which means you just wait that first one and so you are silent on the downbeat is what we call when we have eighth notes. You add in the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and you wait that half a bit before coming in on the word and. Yeah, and if you look at The Lord Bless You and Keep You, there is split parts. There is lots of different folks singing all at the same time. So it's very important that you know when you're supposed to sing and when you're very much not supposed to sing whenever you see stuff like this. So knowing the rests, little recap: whole rest, 4 beats; half rest, 2 beats; quarter rest, 1 beat; eighth rest, half a beat. Any questions there? Okay. So then, some things you might see, even if you look at our staff here, you notice that there sometimes will be dots next to a note. So what that denotes is you take whatever it has a dot on it, and that adds half of its length to that note. So to simplify it, as you see here, a dotted half note, normally 2 beats. With a dot, you're adding half, meaning 1 beat. So a dotted half note is held for 3 beats. In the same way, it's the same amount of time as 3 quarter notes here, but just with that dot added on, it is a half note plus a quarter note, meaning 3 beats. In the same way, you can put dots on quarter notes, meaning they last 1.5. 1, and you change notes on that upbeat because it's that you hold that half and then come in on the next half. I've seen things as silly as dotted whole notes on very odd band pieces where you're supposed to, they play with time signatures and notate weird things. But the main thing to know is that when something has a dot on it, you're adding half of its full length onto it. So a half note is 2 beats. Add the dot, you're adding 1 more beat. It's 3 beats. Same thing with a quarter note. Normally it's 1 beat. You add on a dot, it adds a half beat, which makes it a quarter plus an eighth. Again, I'm just kind of dropping all this on you, so there will be questions. Yeah.
For triplets.
Yes. Yeah. Triplets, and triplets are even same kind of notation, but it's where you're fitting 3 notes into every beat, which we'll kind of look at when we look at time signatures. But yeah, good for triplets. Good for having a word kind of hold out and then moving on to something very quickly. Music notation is a bottomless well of new tools and things you can use. But yeah, looking at this here, just know that a dot adds on half of the note's duration to it. Yeah, any other questions, comments? Like I said, this is a lot, so feel free to continue to look stuff up, or even if you have more questions after the fact, feel free to come up and ask me. I'm happy to answer them. So we have looked at notes, where they are and what that means. We've looked at the key signature, which helps us know what notes are going to be sharp, flat, or completely normal as they normally are. We've looked at the clef and kind of what that denotes. And now we know what the funny shapes mean. We know what the circle with a tail means. We know what a dot with a tail with the bar in the middle means. We know whole notes, half notes as denoted here. We know quarter notes and eighth notes, which are denoted here. We know what that dot means. We know why that makes a note different. So the last big part of the music here is time signatures. Remember how I said that for the most part, a measure of music lasts 4 beats? We're about to change all that now. But the main thing I want to point out first is when you see these numbers that kind of look like a fraction at the beginning of each song, that is just telling you how the rhythm structure is going to go for the song. Meaning, whenever you see a 4 on the bottom, that tells you that the quarter note is what denotes each beat. So when you see 4 quarter notes, it sounds like note, 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 note. As we're going to talk about in a little bit, what we call compound time, or when you see an 8 on the bottom, that means that every 8th note is a beat. Well, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but that's the main ones you have to know. I have never seen anything besides a 4 or an 8 at the bottom in band music. Sometimes they like to get complicated and there'll be a 2, but that just means the same thing as a 4, but half the time. But for the context of song leading, 4 and 8 are the only numbers you're ever going to see on the bottom there as the bottom note. Now, what does the top note? What does the top number mean? The top number simply tells you how many beats are going to be in a measure. So as you see here, in 4/4 time, there are going to be 4 quarter notes or not 4 quarter notes, but 4 beats in every measure. The same way, in 3/4, it's the same thing. The quarter note denotes every beat, but there's only going to be 3 beats in every song. Now, I will say about probably 85% of our worship songs are in 4/4. It's the most commonly found one. That is just how it is. If you look at The Lord Bless You and Keep You, if you're still open to it, that is in 4/4. There are songs that are in different time signatures. Where's my example one here? Yeah, 632. Yeah, 632s and 6/8, and we'll get there. But if you turn over to 273, I know the Lord will find a way. Number 273 is a good example of 3/4. It's the same way that every beat is at 1, 2, 3, but instead of having a 4th beat, we start over and go back to 1 on the next measure. So 1, 2, 3. I know the Lord will find a way for me. 2, 3. 1, 2. I know the Lord will find a way. If you tried to count that in 4s, it would feel really off and wonky and weird and wouldn't line up correctly. And then there are examples of songs that are written in 2/4, meaning that there are just 2 beats per song. One of the most famous ones I've learned, at least moving to Wisconsin, is roll out the barrel, we'll have a barrel of fun. Lots of polka music likes to stay in 2/4 because it's very punchy. You feel the kind of the rhythm of every measure is very short. So 2/4 is good for polka music. It kind of always feels like the song is pressing forward. That is just kind of rolling along. And then, yeah, there are examples of, there are really weird songs that have 5/4 time signatures. There are songs, I think there's a song in the songbook that is 6/4, and it is, if 657, if you try and count through it, it feels very odd. And oftentimes that is for notation purposes. It's easier to write instead of trying to write in compound time. Yeah, the Haven of Rest. So every measure is going to be 6 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. And as we sing these songs, you tend to feel like the word that falls at the beginning of the measure kind of has more of a punch to it, because the way the music flows, the way it's written, it's meant to feel that way. You're meant to feel every beginning of the measure feels like a fresh start for a measure. Going back to our example with I know the Lord will find a way, you kind of feel the way that the music lands on that first note. I know the Lord will find a way for me. I know the Lord will find a way for me. It all kind of fits in the flow of the music. And that's why it's notated that way, because the way that you feel it, that's just putting a rhythm to it. So yeah, that's kind of some examples of 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, and yeah, you'll see examples with 5, 6. I've never seen anything higher than 6. Once you get to like 8/4, at that point, it's just write them longer in 4/4. But moving on then to compound. Compound is where things I like to talk about getting in compound time. Things get bouncy because when you have 3 notes per beat with the 8 notes, it's nice that they've included these red lines because it feels like the first note kind of bounces, and then when you get to the next beginning of the measure, it feels like that same bounce. And as we start practicing conducting and such, you kind of feel the songs have more of a bounciness to the way you conduct them. But for music theory purposes here, every measure is going to have 6 beats because an eighth note is a beat for every single one. So when we're counting through each measure, it sounds something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 2 main kind of pulses to each measure, but there are 3 notes in between, or not in between, but as a part of every beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And in the same way, we have also 9/8. There's 12/8, which is the same as 4/4, 3/4, 2/4, but each one has 3 notes to each beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's kind of where that bounciness comes from. If you ever listen to a waltz, waltzes sound very bouncy because they are dance music, choreography music, but it kind of has that natural sway to it. You kind of feel the way the music kind of bounces. Da, 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 da. Bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, bum, bum. It feels very bouncy. And so, in the same way, they'll use different kinds of time signatures to help the song feel a certain way. And that's all through music notation with time signatures. So, recapping, our bottom numbers here, 4 and 8, denote whether or not the quarter note is the beat of each song with the 4 on the bottom. Each beat is one note. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. In 3/4, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And then in our compound times, are the ones that have 8 on the bottom. You have the 3 notes per beat without more bounciness. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you just count them out loud, you can count them as 1, 2, 1, 2. But you have those notes in between. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Any other questions about the time signature? Yeah.
Songs where it changes in the middle of the song.
It does, yeah. There are songs. I don't have an example off the top of my head, just because it doesn't happen very often. Is what I'll say there is that 94, 904. Gotcha. I'm sorry. What? No, yeah, no. I'm confused why they did that.
I saw that on another page.
Okay.
Like half of some of the measures are 3, 4, and some are 2.
2. Huh. I've seen it where the different measures are different time signatures. I've never seen it written where they write it all at the beginning and then you kind of have to figure out where it changes, because usually whenever I see that, they will put the time signature at the beginning of the section where it changes. But yeah, no, that's interesting.
There's a couple places.
Well, Low in the Gravy Lay it starts out slow and then it goes, but it doesn't
That's
really.
just a rhythm.
Right, yeah, that just changes the speed at which we sing it. But yeah, there's not a time signature change. A good example of 6/8, at least a song that I know well, is if you turn to 805, "As I Come to the Garden Alone." That kind of that really is good for feeling those 3 notes per beat. I come to the garden alone. while the dew is still on the roses. You kind of hear the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, a bit more bounciness to it. But yeah, no, so there are lots of different time signatures, and there's lots of different ways of notating time signatures. I just learned a new one, as we've been shown today. But yes, so that is kind of a rundown of time signatures. Any other questions or good examples? Because like I said, I have not read through the whole songbook, so there are many examples of things that I have not seen before. So any other questions or thoughts on time signatures? All right. So we have put together a good understanding pretty much of our musical staff here. Now, there are other things to keep in mind beyond just what is shown here, and we're going to go into that now. Mainly dynamics. And Patsy is getting a little bit ahead of me because she brought up a very good example. If you want to start turning over to Low in the Grave He Lay, it is number 408. If you want to turn over to 408. Dynamics is just the music word for what volume are we singing. So, dynamics are notated by 3 different letters. P, M, and F. M only appears in the middle there. So starting from quietest to loudest, we have piano. Not only is piano an instrument, but piano is also a dynamic marking, meaning piano just means quiet. We move up to mezzo piano, MP, just means a little quiet. Not fully quiet, but kind of halfway between quiet and regular. Mezzo forte is pretty much just how most songs start. It is not loud, not quiet, just singing as you normally would. Moving up to F by itself is known as forte. Forte is loud. Not really loud, that's coming up. But forte in vocal music usually just means you're singing fully with your full voice. You're not holding back, you're not pushing extra, but you're just singing with a full voice. We get into fortissimo, 2 Fs, that means very loud. That is pushing the sound out, that is making it louder than your full, it is aggressively loud. Now, the funny thing about dynamics is they are not just limited to fortissimo and piano as the limits. There is 2 dynamic marking that is 2 Ps, similar to fortissimo, but it is pianissimo, which is just very quiet. And in some pieces, I have seen as many as, I believe Carrie's told me, they once played a piece that had 5 Fs. 8 Fs. And when you have more than 2 Fs, it doesn't make a new word, you just add an issa to the middle. So if you have 2 Fs, that's fortissimo. If you have 3 Fs, it's fortississimo. And so in the case of Carrie's piece, she was playing at fortississimo. And that is just, composers will do that for a comedic effect, or just straight up wanting to play like, just blast. Don't sing with pretty tone, just as loud as you can forcefully get that air out, do it that loudly. And in the same way, you can have pianissimo. Very, 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 very quiet. Just, if you could whisper while singing, do that. But that is how you will see dynamics or volume notated. All the way from quiet to sort of quiet to middle to full to loud. And even more so. But yes, looking at Low in the Grave He Lay, it's good that Patsy spotted this, because at the very beginning of the song, you'll see that it says 2 Ps or pianissimo, meaning very quiet, and the composer wrote in slowly. So when we sing it, we sing Low in the grave he lay. It's almost like we're at a funeral. We don't want to disturb the resting. Jesus, my Savior. Da, 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 da. And then once we get to the chorus, it very drastically changes to the complete opposite of the spectrum, fortissimo. He doesn't just want us to sing full, he wants us to put our full force, because what are we singing? Up from the grave he arose with a mighty triumph for his foes. I'm going to hold back because real fortissimo I tend to is not pleasant to listen to. But when it's a full congregation, it's that change, it's the feeling of the music. The way that it's notated changes the feel of the song. It goes from funeral, almost a mourning whisper, that low in the grave he lay, to triumphant, to victorious. Up from the grave he arose with a mighty triumph. So yeah, a very good example of our different dynamics. Sometimes, this doesn't happen as much in our worship music, but every once in a while there's a good example of it, are these funny ramp symbols here, called a crescendo and a decrescendo. And if you see those, that just means they want the volume to slowly get louder for a crescendo, or with a decrescendo, they want the music to slowly get softer. So, if you're holding a note in a crescendo, it sounds like, ah. You're not changing the note, but it's going up in volume. And this can happen over multiple notes, but also in the same effect, a decrescendo, you start loud, ah. And sometimes they will notate that they want you to go from piano up to forte, or from mezzo forte, decrescendo to piano. They'll notate where they want that volume to go. But good examples of they want it generally to get louder and they want it generally to get softer. In Low in the Grave He Lay, there is no crescendo or decrescendo. It is just go from very, very quiet and then jump right into that fortissimo. Yeah.
Master, the Tempest is Raging is that does that.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I remember my
What number is
boys-
that?
It's 425.
425.
I remember my boys, I don't think we sang that, but one time in their life, but they were so impressed with that song.
Yeah, and if you look at 425, they notate it in a different way than we see here. They don't use the ramps here, but they write crescendo poco a poco. Does anyone know what poco a poco means? In the Latin, it literally translates to little by little. So crescendo poco a poco, if you remember that song, it slowly builds. You start, whether the wrath of the storm, sea, or demons, or men, or whatever it be, no water can swallow the ship where lies the master of ocean and earth and skies. It all kind of builds and builds and builds into that last note there. And then we'll talk about what that little funny bird's eye thing means. But in the very next couple notes, we go down to mezzo forte. They all shall sweetly obey thy will. Peace be still. And then it goes down to piano. Peace be still. They all shall sweetly obey thy will. Peace, peace be still. That's a good one for dynamics because, yeah, it moves around a lot and it builds and it fades. And that is how we use music notation in worship music to convey feeling. That the way that we change the dynamics, the way that we change the speed, the different notes that we use, if it jumps notes or if it just steps up slowly, it helps build a feeling that composers want to be conveyed when they write the music. And as we learn this, we start to learn how the songs kind of are meant to feel. And here's just a little snippet of music that I was going to use as an example. Sometimes they'll even have you crescendo into a decrescendo. They'll have you build up and come back down. Build and up and come back down. So yeah, it's all from musical effects. And just so you're aware, that's a 16th note, is whenever you go beyond an 8th note and you move the note down even further, that you just add another tail. And so 2 tails, 16th, into more and more and more. But yeah, so crescendos, decrescendos, or another word you might see is diminuendo, that DIM period. That's another name for decrescendo, just a fade into a softer deal. Okay, and then, so now we're just going to look at some other symbols that we might see. They're not used in every song, but they are things you might see as a song leader that help you kind of know where the song is going. When you see two dots here at the end of a measure, that means that you are repeating that section. So wherever those 2 dots are, it wants you to go back to where the next 2 dots are facing the opposite direction, or oftentimes at the beginning of the song. If you turn over to 193 in the book, Guide Me, O Thou Great Jehovah, this is a good example of that. That first line that we sing, guide me, O thou great Jehovah, pilgrim through this barren land. We don't move on to the chorus yet. You see those two dots there? That means repeat that line and sing the next words that it has notated. I am weak, but thou art mighty. Hold me with thy powerful hand. And now we move on to the chorus. Bread of heaven, feed me till I want no more. Yeah, and so that happens every single verse. And you always repeat once. You don't repeat infinite times over and over. It just denotes that it wants you to repeat that line once. So that's what a repeat looks like. Any questions there? And then our little bird's eye thing, as I was talking about, if we go back to the one we were just on. Master of the Tempest is Raging, yeah.
Well, there's one over there, God me out like right Jehovah too.
Oh, right, on the second page. Sorry, yeah, you can say in 193. That's why I picked the song, because it has both. Yeah, so if you remember, bread of heaven, feed me till I want no more. Bread of heaven, that bird's eye symbol there, means that you are to hold the note until the conductor signals you to move on. So the way that we see that in conducting is feed me till I want no, sorry. Bread of heaven, feed me till I want no more. It's literally I usually just come down on the note and then you just kind of hold it out. And then whenever the note is done, you have a kind of hard stop and then you come into a new note. So yeah, the fermata is what that's called in official music terms. I've always called it a bird's eye because that's just what it looks like to me. But that just means hold that note until the conductor shows you to move on. And then a kind of a rare thing, but a thing in a few songs that I've seen is if you see DC al fine. All that means, I don't know the exact Latin terms for it, but that means go back to the beginning and sing it until you hit the word fine. So you sing like usual, ignore the fine at first, and when you get to the end of the song, it says DC al fine. You go back to the beginning and you sing and you sing and you sing and you sing until you hit where it says fine. Which I believe one of our songs that we sang this morning, it doesn't show it whenever you just see the individual lines, but one of the songs that we sang this morning does this.
916.
Yeah, 916. Come share the Lord, I believe. Yeah, so on the slides it doesn't show it as much, but we have 3 verses, but only 2 lines for the chorus. And that's because we sing all the way through the first verse, all the way down to we in turn forgive all wrongs. You go back to the second verse, you sing that whole verse, you sing that second chorus, and then it says DC. So what we do is we go back to the third verse, and we sing the whole third verse, and then the song ends where it says fine. So yeah, good example. I'm glad that was led this morning. A good example of DC al fine just means go back to the beginning and sing until you hit fine. And even in this song, it says that you only fine the third verse. So they'll notate if you're supposed to stop early, you're supposed to stop after a certain verse. The composer will give you the instructions. So, okay. So that is the reading section that's music, your basics on music notation, music reading, what all that kind of means. And again, I realize this is a lot. This was like an entire semester course covering this kind of stuff. So, this will all be recorded, so you can go back and watch this for that kind of practice. But we are going to go on to our song leading section of the class. But first, let's take a quick break, get up, stretch, move around, get some water. If you need to use the bathroom, do that. And we'll come back and we'll get to the song leading part of the class.